Hello, everybody, and welcome to this international webinar of the Creative Waves project, the Creative Waves Baltic Sisterhood of Change, for change, of change. I am the moderator, the leader of this meeting, and I will lead you also through the different points of the program. The program, the agenda is quite tight, so logistics, there will be no space for live questions until we are done, more or less, until 3:15. And then we will pick up the questions from the chat, which you are welcome to place there during the course of the webinar. One of us will pick up the questions when we are ready. I'm Ivona Price, and I am the leader of Intercult in Stockholm, also the lead organization of the project. And who is Intercult? Intercult is a European Center for, this meeting is being recorded, so I must press this button also. Intercult is the European Research Center for Culture, a resource center for culture. We are cultural producers, facilitating collaborations in international partnerships, in European projects, being a hub for international capacity building for cultural organizations in Sweden and Europe and beyond, providing spaces for learning and sharing of change-making artistic practices, and engaging also in European politics through mainly Europe Direct Stockholm office, which is in our venue. We are an independent production and European center established in '96. We initiate capacity building projects primarily on the European level, in across disciplines and in multiple partnerships. Creative Waves is one of those projects. We work in networks like River Cities, which is our basic network, dealing with the culture on waterfronts, but also others. Let me see, I have some problems here. Then we have this Europe Direct Stockholm, which is a European information office, and some of our projects. So together we create, as we say, we work really actively with different cultural productions in international surrounding. Baltic Sisterhood of Change. One day we sit together with my colleagues from Poland and from Estonia and from Kaliningrad, and we thought that it's time to do something in this direction. Crafts, women, traditions, community. What shall we do to empower ourselves in these projects, women dealing with the creative surrounding of this project, and women who could be invited to this project. And we thought that as somebody beautifully wrote, that embroidery is not just embroidery, and cooking is not just a food. Today we think that female gatherings, traditionally women gathered around crafts, and we think that it was mainly about final results. But culture, crafts, that kind of folk culture has always been maintaining important community building and sisterhood. And that's why the Baltic Sisterhood of Change was born. This aspect of community building inspired this international collaboration. This is a collaboration between Intercult as a lead partner, Baltic Sea Cultural Center in Gdańsk, Euroregion Baltic, an association of Polish communes, Estonian Women's Studies and Resource Center, ENUT, and the team of activists from Kaliningrad region in Russian Federation. Creative Waves, the goal of the project is to empower women, especially from smaller, more remote places, but also from migrant communities, which are nowadays very valid for example, a big city like Stockholm. Women often already have skills in crafts. It's a hobby, but they lack digital skills, they lack connection to the digital world. They lack also the entrepreneurial skills. So we would like in this project to promote women creatives, to bring together traditions and crafts and new digital technologies, and help those groups, those women who we gather in our venues, in our countries, to be stronger in their surrounding, but also as a more distant goal to make the society more resistant. We are all coming from the Baltic countries, so we are speaking about the Balticness, about the feeling for the region, about the traditions of the region. So not only one country, but also the international feeling, the exchanges between the countries which are involved, which are placed around the Baltic Sea region. And of course, connected to the policies such as the European Green Deal. Project activities are simple. We are meeting each other. We are speaking about different hobbies like embroidery, like pottery, like herb gathering, like storytelling, which is always present during those meetings, like textile painting of roses, like herbs, like jewelry. We are heading for international webinars, and this one is the first one of that series. We will be back with more. We are, of course, enjoying physical meetings as the societies opened again after the COVID. We will have trainings, digital trainings, creating patterns, but also creating communication, like posting on Instagram. The project outcome, we had for creating a toolkit for everybody to use, how to work with the traditional patterns, crafts, and transform those patterns, for example, to digital technology. We also had for creating a network, all ladies, girls we are meeting nowadays at our venues are really interested in this international collaboration and exchanging of experiences. We are going to make a survey, the regular work in the project, and we will be back on all those tangible results. Here you can see pictures from the first gatherings in Kaliningrad and also in Poland, I think. Magda and Julia will tell us more about it, but you can see that it's a very nice atmosphere and that people are working hard on creating patterns. In Stockholm, we had the first meeting already. It was on Saturday, and we were speaking about what can we do. There was a show of our artistic leaders. Our artistic leaders are very experienced craft artists. Halina is a designer. She's designing clothes based on folk patterns for big designers of the world. She's also an editor of a designer magazine, which is an international online publication. And she's one of our leaders. Wiesława is an older lady. She has been working for all her life, nowadays on a pension, but with lots of hobbies, and she will teach us how to make those beautiful felt flowers with stones. But she showed on Saturday what can you do with your hands? And other ladies also brought with themselves examples of what they are doing, samples, and showed us, and the atmosphere was really, really great, beautiful, empowering, and everybody afterwards wrote that we will come again. We want to be in this really, really powerful group of women, and there were so many ideas that I think that our small project is not possible to embrace all of them, but we will try. And also our own people, Josefine Holmström from Sweden and Pixie, they will show the ladies, how the artists, how to make digital promotion. And now I would like to give the floor to our one of our guests, Agnieszka Jacobson Cielecka. Agnieszka is a curator and a design critic from Poland. In her work, she connects different fields of design. As a curator, she creates and organizes exhibitions and programs. She also writes about design, comments on phenomena, and follow trends. As one of the most important promoters of young designers, she is a curator of numerous presentations of Polish design in museums and festivals in Europe and Asia. She's a member of program boards and juries of many Polish and foreign festivals and competitions. And she is the dean of the design department at the University of Warsaw and the co-author of the curriculum at the School of Form. And Agnieszka will tell us more about crafts as a making process. Agnieszka, the floor is yours, please. Agnieszka, you are muted.
Yes. Okay. So, okay. So hello everybody. It's great to be here, and I'm going to share my screen with you. So probably you won't see me, but okay. And then okay. Is it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so first of all, thank you for having me here, and it's really great opportunity to talk about craft and technology, and probably you will find the things I'm going to show as a quite distant from what craft is, but it's not at all. And I when preparing this speech first, I wanted to focus on my Baltic experiences because of the group, and to share with you my visual journey on design typologies around the Baltic Sea, where material and craft were very present as a way of making things, and making things using the local materials and crafts, and also very much rooted in the views. But for this topic, the missing factor was technology. So so skipping this story, I just want to ensure you that sharing the same views and the same landscape and the same colors in the surrounding and the same jobs and crafts and materials results in surprisingly unified aesthetics. And to make the long story short, I just proved by the exhibition I created that the Baltic Sea connects us rather than divides. And the objects I collected and organized along the sections of land looked more like the collections designed for one brand than the designs made by designers from 8 countries connected by Baltic Sea line. So then, searching on what to talk about, I wanted to focus on women, what would be pretty natural in this sisterhood group. But also for me, because which is interesting coincidence. I'm currently working on the project which is named Looking Through Objects. It's the exhibition, and it's presenting 16 Polish women designers. And the first venue will be this summer in Tallinn. So, but then I decided to focus neither on Baltic nor on feminine aspect of design or making, but on the craft itself, seeing as a process. And I want to show you the few material experimentation which are connected to environment or to checking the boundaries of technology. And I would say, you know, however, the saying that design is about processes is quite obvious, but from my perspective is essential to realize when we are worrying about craft in the defensive position or craft which is disappearing or underappreciated, that we cannot progress technologies and we cannot progress material studies without craft, because almost in every single time we want to solve problems generated by the growth and the technological development, we have to step back to understand materials and processes, and somehow we have to unlearn, to get out of the box, to move forward. So here we come to the quote which promoted this speech online. So I would spoke it loudly. So I believe that trips to the past brings us hope for the future, and the craftspeople have the knowledge which we cannot gain at school. Although we won't act like historical carpenters, weavers, or potters in the future, we can use their wisdom and expertise for designing pieces to be produced by robots, factories, or 3D printers. And we won't invent anything without understanding the processes and materials. And not to get you bored, I want just to show you the few case studies and examples which I found interesting, which especially the first one, from the first sight, it looks very not like anything about craft. And it was the digital manual exhibition. And it was the exhibition of 20 experiments, about 20 experiments made in Material Architecture Lab, which is the research laboratory at Bartlett School of Architecture in University College in London. And of course, the title is the reference to the lab's way of working between hand and machine. And it's quite unique because nowadays many processes for digital fabrication stay in the computer. And here in Bartlett, the tutors are encouraging research that goes between modeling software and hands-on experimentation with real and messy and irregular materials. And if you looked at the objects which are made out of coconut fiber, 3D printed sand, resin, recycled plastic, and slip cast ceramic, you don't have a feeling that it has anything to do with technology, either with craft. I would rather say that it looks like art pieces, or even more like the elements which are the natural creatures. It looks like erosion. It looks like, you know, the structures which you can observe in the nature, in the stone, sometimes on the sands. But probably the last connection would be that it's the kind of digital craft. And it's made for understand better the limitations and possibilities of material. So, and it's why it's called craft, because it's what craftsmen do. To do anything, you have to feel, you have to understand the nature of material, how it folds, how much it's strong or elastic, and so on and so on. So, and I think that's the amazing space for cooperation between the people who know the material and people who know programs and technologies. And also here we have the architects who know the structures and they know how to count it. Then I have the other project, which is very different and which was also based on very different need. So industrial engineer, even not designer, industrial engineer Alvaro Catalán de Ocon, a Spanish guy. In 2011, he took a part in a project focused on the reuse of PET plastic bottles as a way of addressing the plastic waste issue that was happening in Colombia. So his starting point was focusing on the deep contradiction between the deep contradiction that is hidden behind each petal bottle. It's the product which has a very short lifespan, but it takes decades to decompose it. So he reconsidered the role of the plastic bottle by merging local weaving techniques with industrial lighting. So here I had it should be, and it is. So so taking the inspiration from the form of Japanese tool, he invented how to cut and how to change the structure of the bottle to make it as a construction for weaving. And the project started as an awareness project, strongly linked to the just reuse of the bottles. But over the time, it unfolded also as an anthropological study of different ingenious weaving traditions, underlining the role that craft knowledge can play in local culture and accentuating the preservation of craft knowledge and tradition. And the project started in Spain in 2011. Then in 2012, it went to Colombia and it was launched there 1 year later. But then in 2013, it reached new countries and cultures, beginning from Chile. Then, so it was Colombia, then it was Chile, I jumped over. Then it's Ethiopia and Japan. And okay, and then Chile is here, so the second round. And the latest journey was in Australia. And that's also the very important aspect here, because he designed, so he reacted into the global problem of plastic weight, of plastic waste, but also he gave the occupation and to many craftsmen, preserving in the same time the tradition. So if you look at those examples, they are all made on the same base, but in the same time they are very individual. So they keep the very important value of craft, of the uniqueness, of the authorship, of the interpretation. So here we have a design as a language. So we have, on the level of values, we have sustainability, because clearly it solves it solves. It proposes the way of solving the waste problem, but also it's about collaboration. It's about creativity and innovation, and this variety in globalization. So it's the same and it's different in every single culture, and with every single designer, craftsman, craftwoman taking the challenge to weave this kind of lamp. And on this slide, you can see the collection, how many possibilities, how many differences, how many different shapes one can create out of the very single plastic, very simple plastic bottle connected with the genuine skills of designers. Then I have I want to talk just a bit about what we are doing at School of Form where I'm teaching, and because again it's about studying crafts as a way of understanding processes, and it's what students do at the robotic classes and robotic and parametric classes. They are students of industrial design, and so it was the first of the series of the projects where Basia Jaman for graduation work decided to teach the robot how to do the swivel stitch, and she was inspired by Snutki, and Snutki is the open work embroidery where different members of community prepare the pieces of embroidery, which are then connected to into one bigger piece. But if we look, and you know, we used to look at this as a beauty and as a decoration and as a tradition. But what Basia did, she had to understand every single move of the robot arm. She had to translate this process from somebody who has 2 hands with 5 fingers into the one arm process, which is so also she had to design not the supplies, the supporting tools to make it possible. So to find the right proportion between the movement and tool, she had to 3D print 107 special endings for the robot to make it working. And here it's the very similar project where the couple of students wanted to teach robot how to do the stocking stitch construction. So it means that it's it goes round, and they use the copper wire to do it. And if they analyze this process and this construction, they realize that it changes the possibilities, and it really enlarges the area of the possible use of possible application of this kind of construction. Because, you know, if we talk about the socks or tights, it's the very useful thing, but it's the possibility of changing scale is quite limited, and this could be probably applied for the architecture. So I think it's also this connection between designer and craftsman is about searching for new spaces and searching for the new areas of application, of exploring, of understanding the processes applied in the in the new ways which were not seen before. And okay, so that's how those constructions look like. And then it's again, it's the third of the series. It's about baskets weaving. And Sarah Bosch, she tried to understand if the wicker, which is very irregular material, can be treated by robot. It cannot so far, so she used rattan. But again, she proved that it's possible. And but I think the designer who passed this way, this kind of training, is able to make the anatomy of the process of any process, to decompose it and put it back together. Then I think I'm running out of time, so I have two other examples which I will skip. I just maybe will show you two slides that if you want to design this kind of construction, first you have to understand the materiality and the properties of the thing which we want to design. So what I want to say, it's to conclude that the craft is the language which doesn't lean on nationality, and it doesn't lean on education, and it's a very collective social activity. So if you are craftswomen or craftsmen, just be open to cope with designers, because technologies are not going to steal your jobs. What you can do is to support each other, designers and engineers and craftsmen, and in this way to make the world better in every sense, as you saw on this example with that lamp. And there is really no juxtaposition. It's the field for cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnieszka. I think that we could listen to you and watch the examples for another hour. So let us come back to this possibility another time. But now I would like to thank you so much. And now I would like to let in our second speaker of today, Lissa Holloway-Attaway. Lissa is working as associate professor in media arts, aesthetics, and narration in the division of game development at the University of Skövde in Sweden. Lissa teaches within the games education, and she's the leader of the Games Art Media Experience Research Group at the university. Lissa is involved in developing projects and research at the intersections of arts, humanities, and digital technology. And she explores technological interventions in a range of cultural contexts. Lissa will today speak about making and telling interactive stories and games for and about cultural heritage. Lissa, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for inviting me to come to talk about this very interesting topic. And as often happens, I think Agnieszka's talk set mine up very well in terms of having some context to bring it together. So that's very helpful. I'm going to share my screen. And okay. I assume that's visible.
Yes.
For everybody. Okay, good. And I'm just going to look at time here too. Okay, so again, you've already had a bit of an introduction to me, including the name of my research group, which I'll come back to, but just as a way to suggest that although I'm in a division of game development, I don't consider myself a games researcher per se. I work across lots of different kinds of digital media and culture and traditional arts and crafts and, with a high focus on storytelling and understanding that even the games that I'm now working on or creating, or game experiences or gamified experiences, are, complex and interwoven in lots of different ways. So today I'll talk a little bit about that and share some projects. But I sort of want to start with this first kind of framing quote, because as I rush through, as we have to do all the projects that I want to share, I think if we just remember sort of even this first slide that I present to you as a kind of inspiration for thinking about this, and this is where I think that Agnieszka's talk really comes through. I think this is what's important. So I'm quoting to you from one of my favorite sort of feminist philosopher theorist, Donna Haraway, in one of her recent books called Staying with the Trouble, Making Kin in the Thulacine, and I'll come back to that. But this quote really resonates with me in terms of thinking about how we tell stories. It matters what matters we use to think other matters with. It matters what stories we tell to tell other stories with. It matters what knots knot knots, what thoughts think thoughts, what descriptions describe descriptions, and what ties tie ties. It matters what stories make worlds and what worlds make stories. So to me, one of the reasons I find that important is because this focus on the material, and even just this first sentence, it matters what matters we use to other matters with, suggests that, the materials from which we want to tell our stories are the framing principles for how we tell them, and they change depending on whatever our material engagement is. So that even if we're working in digital worlds, which people often refer to as these virtual worlds, as though they're somehow removed from our material experiences, we have to think always of moving back and forth between those mediums and understanding that the ways that our stories are shaped come from this kind of complex moving between the digital and the physical world and the physical realm, and they might change, and the interactions are very complex that come with that. And again, Haraway's book, Staying with the Trouble, suggests specifically that, we're living in, well, especially we can think of today and with recent political events, but we live in troubled times. We live in times where, she reflects on the fact that we live in this kind of unofficially named geological epoch called the Anthropocene, which is the age, the geological age where we think that humans have created, an impact on the world's surfacing from the level of the atmospheric to the geological, that the impact of humans on the world in which we live is very troubled. And that in order to get out of those troubles, we have to sort of stay with them and focus on them, but also think about how can we tell stories that don't just repeat the ways we've told them before, and that foreground like the human, as though the human figure is the only thing that can tell the story. We have to think through new mediums, and we have to get stuck in those knots, those twists, those embroidered threads, and think about how they can help us release into stories. So as I said, that's sort of my inspiration for thinking about that. And I think another way to think of that, what happened there? Okay. Okay, well, that's interesting. My slides went away. Let me see if I can try again. Okay. It wouldn't be a discussion about technology if the technology didn't fail. So here we go. So another way to think of that, again, drawing from Haraway, is this idea of tentacular creativity is the aim, meaning just like the tentacles of an octopus that are these multi-sensory organs that are mixing of taste and touch and smell and kind of all of these ways in which we understand the world, that the kinds of stories that I like to think of that can be engaged by technology are these sort of spread out. They don't have a core center. They don't have a human person who's narrating what's happening. They're open to thinking about how all the materials of that kind of story world can help us come together to create another kind of way of thinking. So again, I'll probably keep referencing this kind of tentacularity, but I just very briefly, just to say something more precise about, so my story that matters, where I'm coming from right now, is, as I said, at the University of Skövde, or the Högskola i Skövde, and where I'm in a very large games department with 500 plus students. I think we're closer to 600 now. And at the undergraduate level, we have master's programs and all kinds of things, from serious games to game user development, or game users experience, which is a new program. But this one in pink, digital narration, cultural heritage and game technologies, is where I've been teaching a lot, and where we actually are working specifically with thinking about how can we tell stories about heritage using game technologies, not necessarily specifically games or digital video games, although that's where a large portion of our people come, but how can we do it by using the technologies and the affordances of interaction and of games, and to think about new ways that we can rethink what a museum space is, or a heritage space, or intangible cultural heritage, which we come back to. But I also work, as I said, in this kind of tentacular way, where we work within business and industry and across many disciplines, from arts and literature and science to cognitive science. And so it's a very special configuration, and I feel very privileged to kind of be in a place where we don't necessarily, put the digital or the computer science over the arts and humanities, where we try to keep them intersecting so that they can inform each other and create this very sort of transdisciplinary and interdisciplinary cooperation. And I think that's key, especially if we're going to think about ways that traditional handicrafts or material crafts can be transformed by technology. We don't want to impose the technology on the sort of the inner core, the spirit of what it is we're trying to make. So often I move between these two sort of mediums. So again, another way just to think about that for a moment is to say, and I would say this is kind of a frame of some of the current research, or the ways that my research group or that my colleagues work with, going across the arts and humanities, again, where we might line up, again, these are not pure categories, but things like literature, performing arts, sound, music, graphical arts, all of those areas. And we might study them in a socio-cultural way, but also balanced by thinking about, computers and digital design tools, or things that you may have heard of, like augmented reality or virtual reality or AI software platform. We might think about users as opposed to readers or viewers or anything else. And we try to put them together. And so in this middle space, I've just outlined a few ways that I have been working in terms of thinking about storytelling. So IDNs, which is just a general short form way of saying interactive digital narratives. And I'll give you examples of those. And those can include things like games, but I say games because I want us to remember that games are a very old medium. They're not necessarily computer and video games, although that's what all my students want to talk about. They go back a long time, and they create bonds and social connection. Transmedia, which is a way to think about how you can tell one core story across many different platforms. So you might tell it in person with a live storytelling. It might be on a website. It might be on a phone. It might be in a blog or in a fan fiction site. But how can you distribute, again, tentacles, right? How can you distribute stories across those? But I'm really focused a lot also on MR, which is mixed reality experiences. Again, not purely going into one domain or the other, but staying in this middle ground where we really try to think about the physical and the virtual kind of coming together. Okay, so why do that? Again, it's about digital creativity and innovation, thinking about how we can materially engage with stories, so we don't, as I said, fall into one realm, but also to think about networking and sharing. One of the things that digital tools do allow us to do is to create a larger network, to share what we do. And we can do this in multiple places, in schools or community sites, I work a lot in museums and at historical sites, but also in art galleries or exhibitions, formal, informal, public exhibitions in lots of different spaces, or in online platforms, kind of mixing these things together. So some of the projects I'll share with you now, and as I said, I'll speed through them, unfortunately, use sort of some of this coming together. So again, at the core of this, and I won't go into detail, but just to say that I'm inspired by people like Nina Simon and her work in the Participatory Museum, where co-creation, we try to create alongside the users, or using multiple different people. So I might work with an archaeologist and a storyteller and a student studying games, and a community person or a politician who also wants to think about that. So we want to really think about ways in which we can engage a community of people to give voice and to create a level of dialogue. So again, inspired by this idea of the museum without walls. I know we're not talking only here about museums and heritage, but I think the principle that sort of heritage is, we've transformed in terms of thinking about heritage isn't owned by a museum site who tells a story with an exhibition, but we're moving towards these audience-centered institutions, and visitors construct their own meaning. It's not told from one perspective where they're learning, and that they're finding ways to include their voices, which digital technology does very well, can also inform and invigorate the kind of the project design. Again, I won't go into this in detail. I'm happy to talk about it later, but I do focus around this idea of this kind of not just the post-digital museum, but post-digital age, which suggests that we know technologies, we're all familiar with them. We're on a Zoom site right now, even at our most basic. We don't have to keep inventing new forms of technology. What we need to think about is how can they be used? We expect them to be there now. So how can we use them in new and surprising ways that serve our purposes, so we don't focus on the technology necessarily, but we focus on the content that, that can really help us embody an experience. So I also just referenced this one study from 2014 that reinforces that. It's about focused on serious games for cultural heritage. If you don't know, serious games are the kind of games that are meant not just for entertainment purposes. You might find them in, for example, a medical profession where someone's using games, or like a video game might help train a stroke patient to get back some cognitive abilities again, or a emergency management people might be using games to help train for some kind of an emergency scenario or something like that. But what they suggest is that when it comes to cultural heritage, again, the thing that's best served by games are intangible cultural heritage. That is, for example, cultural values, artistic expression, social traditions, customs. So, and this is where we're really lacking in content, and where we're really open to creativity and innovation. Again, this is the affective domain, where we can feel empathy and personal expression, as opposed to just thinking again about technologies. Okay, so here is where I will just speed through some projects. So this particular project that I show you is a big storytelling project I've been involved with now for a couple of years with colleagues. It's focused on the Skövde region where I live. So for those of you who don't know, you can see on the map here. And if you look closely within the little purple bit there, you can see where Skövde is and how it falls. This is a very old region in Sweden, with a lot of history, a lot of storytelling, folklore. Most of it, as you can see, we're between these two big lakes, and a lot of it is water-based and water creatures and so on. So our project, which is called Kastis, which is in Swedish, it would translate, or in English from the Swedish, it would be cultural heritage and game technologies in the Skövde region. And it's a project that basically attempts to use storytelling to transform the physical space of the region into a kind of a folktale space, and to tell all the stories of the municipalities through bringing to life sort of creatures and folklore through this kind of storytelling project that we are. So what we've done is we've taken a traditional children's book series, developed one for each of the regions in the and our municipalities in the region, and tried to tell a kind of a frame narrative about these two characters who travel through the region, and develop over time each of them to tell us kind of a specific story that might be, for example, if you look at some of the pictures here, you'll also notice we have a lot of sort of female water creatures that we bring to life through telling the story. And the story itself is it's a traditional children's book story, but it also uses an augmented reality application to tell that story. So and we tell the stories, so I'll show them how the augmented reality works, but we also use them not just in the children's book, but putting signage up around historical sites and landmarks that when you scan with your mobile telephone, when you scan certain characters, they come to life and pop up in the landscape, and where you can collect more information about them. So this club book, again, the two characters are Kira and Lupa. That stands for Kira and Lupa's Bestiarium. And the frame narrative is that they're chasing an evil circus director around the region who has captured many of these folkloric figures and kept them. He captured them and made them perform in his circus, and they're chasing after him, trying to release them from this kind of circus space. And it's meant for children to discover each of the characters in each of the region using the mobile phones. They scan these figures. You can see the circus director is popping up from a sea. They use their phone to scan the books. They get more information about the creature who pops out of the book. They collect it in this kind of bestiarium anthology in their phone and learn more about it. But they're also compelled to travel through the region with their parents to experience the story in sort of multiple ways. So again, they can find out their own very micro local heritage. So for example, the creature here, like on the right, like Nekin, who's from a specific town called Tibro, and he plays, well, he doesn't look like it here because it's a children's book. He plays naked in the woods on his fiddle. Or we have a specific white horse that belongs to another city in the region. Or we, as I said, on site, you can travel to these various places and find figures. But we try to connect these also to a series of museum exhibitions where you can discover artifacts in the museum, where we're encouraging not just to read the books, but as I said, to go to the museums and explore some of the physical artifacts that can also pop up to you. So for example, at the bottom left, this vase, you can learn about it, you can scan figures and learn history in multiple different methods, not just in sort of in the book or in the application, but to actually physically move through the region and discover your own sort of history, or even here to go to just a physical exhibition about the books in a local library. We have board games that have developed out of this too. The board games are based on the book series. They create another intervention for students in schools or in libraries to come and play the board games, which again, these have all been developed from students and other local artists who participated with us through different iterations to keep retelling the story in these different mediums. Or for example, now we even have a tourist guidebook that's available from the tourist office using the same characters, but in a different way to continue to encourage people to travel through the region and learn the history. We have many spin-offs, and again, I'll just quickly go through, but for example, we have a spin-off book series that's based on a glass making factory in Sweden, where it's another book and another game, 2 new characters, and you can learn about how to make glass ceramics, or not glass ceramics, but how to make glass in the sort of the old way you do that by following these characters through this book and by playing little mini games about that. It's gotten quite a bit of interest when it first came out. Another project, you can see Kira and Lupa look slightly different in this one, but how that are focused on industrial museums and telling the stories of old technologies, like here's a paper making machine. And this was in collaboration with an industrial museum in the region where kids can play the game, but also learn that, how, paper was made and the history also of the time where it was made. Or they can learn about another project, learning about landscapes, again, using augmented reality to scan images and learn about the kind of the cultural landscape, and then go out into the area. This is in Lissa Castle, a little north, where you can learn about various kinds of climate challenges and other kind of global challenges, and then you can go out into the landscape and play a game with your phone with these different creatures. Again, I'll go through more, and just another project that has been taking up a lot of my space, along with partners like Magda, who's also here with me, is about how to use Minecraft, which is a popular commercial game, to also allow kids and youth to explore their own neighborhoods, recreate them using Minecraft maps that are simulations of actual neighborhoods, and then to go in and try to recreate those neighborhoods in playful settings and in workshops to learn about the heritage, but also just to express how they see their history. We don't tell them how to see the history, but how do they understand their heritage? So that, for example, in Karlskrona in Sweden, we can work with the Naval Museum, which was one of our partners, and to host a series of workshops there where we brought together kids and asked them, to think about, what does heritage mean to you? What are your stories? What stories can you tell? And how can you do this by rebuilding? So they would sometimes rebuild monuments, but they would also sometimes just add in new features into the landscape so that we could learn a little more about, how they saw their worlds and what they did. So this was a long project. Sometimes they give you things you don't expect to see, like we tell them to build heritage, but they wanted to build a McDonald's. But it also tells us a little bit more about how they see their spaces. And again, this was a big project in partnership with people. For example, we had workshops in Riga, in Latvia, new kinds of games and new workshops that were in Gdansk in Poland, also in Kiel in Germany. So again, through a long process of kind of playful storytelling and material interaction in both the physical space, but also in the virtual spaces, we sort of bring people together to think about how play can create a network of experience to help us let stories emerge about what might be hidden or intangible or underneath the surface. So I think that's where I can stop now.
So inspiring, Lissa. Suddenly from the crafts, the traditional crafts, where I were on Saturday, and I think that also Magda and our friends from Kaliningrad were there for a couple of days ago. We moved to new dimensions with Agnieszka, to digital tools, which are really, really advanced. And I have some questions here, because access to those design tools and collaboration is a challenge in itself. But also to the world of virtual reality, augmented reality, to games, Minecraft, and I think that many cultural operators, producers are really touching those areas now, dealing with such simple, so to say, heritage like stories. So from stories to a very advanced technology is the step which we are taking just now, everybody, and we are bringing other people on that travel. I would like to go back to our partnership now and invite Julia Bardun, who is one of the artists of the Kaliningrad collective. And Julia is working in the rural landscape of the Kaliningrad region, meeting women in villages, gathering women from villages around the subjects of creating together with different hobbies, different knowledge, different experiences. And those ladies and Julia and the artists in Kaliningrad are really our inspiration in this project. I think that you were the first one out with the meetings, and you inspired the meetings in Stockholm, and you definitely inspired all of us to how to proceed. So Julia, please tell us what are you doing with the women in Kaliningrad? The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Ivona, and thank you, dear partners. It's a great pleasure to be a part of the project and of the event. And I can see here my colleagues also who used to work before. And it's very difficult to speak for me today.
Well, with you, Julia, no problem. Strength to you.
Because it's a very painful moment for many people. And even though there are many positions within the Russian society, many of us don't support that, what is happening. And strongly disagree with that. So we hope this can be stopped soon. So I used to work within the contemporary art field for quite a lot of years, for many years, and I can see people who used to work before together. So as of the end of the year, I'm not anymore a part of the NCC in Kaliningrad, and it's greatly to the pandemic also that I moved to the countryside, and the whole life has changed, and I have a lot of beautiful neighbors and partners in the countryside at the moment. And once we got an invitation to join the project, I thought it would be relevant to the context where I currently live and work. And I'm very happy that my colleagues, and I have a background more in cultural management and contemporary arts, and my colleagues from the Kaliningrad team of the project, Anna Olimpieva, who is a sociologist and urbanist and feminist, and Maria Kakhanovska, who is more like environmental activist and feminist activism, and Sasha Artamonova, who is a contemporary artist from the famous Gentle Woman duo, feminist duo. So we sort of decided that we can work as an interdisciplinary team to see how we can address this issue of active women based in remote areas and creating some kind of products which can be linked to the heritage, to local heritage, and how can we help and empower them all together, like working with artists, but also helping on the sort of leadership level, and also connecting digital tools to that. And so as you can see, the team is quite sort of diverse, but also the target group is quite diverse. We first thought it would be women from rural areas, remote areas like Krasnolesye in the eastern part of the region, but also the Curonian Spit at the countryside. And you can see, for example, one of the participants, my neighbor Natalia, who is developing like local plant-based gastronomy. We did a very beautiful project last year, very cross-sectoral, and one of the outcomes is on the right-hand side, those really new gastronomy products that are very rooted in the area, but they are sort of reworked through creative approaches and cooperation of many professionals from different disciplines. And on the left-hand side, you can see a vase.
Julia, we can see your first picture.
Ah, that's strange. And now?
No, I can
No.
see it elsewhere.
And this way?
Yeah, this is, yeah.
I'll show like that.
This is, yeah, basic info now.
You can see the second one.
Yes, yes.
So like an example of what participants of our project do. So Natalia, who I mentioned with the gastronomy side, but on the left hand side, that's like a vase created by a colleague of mine, Zina, who started working with clay, with local clay, creating like, she calls it slow ceramic. It's like on the verge of human and natural forms, very much connected again to the landscape. So these are just few examples, and as a first, we had some idea of what we would like to do, but then we decided we need to discuss also with the participant what their needs might be. And here is the map of the region, and you can see where people come from. So it's like two opposite sides of the region. And these are people with backgrounds in gastronomy, like in local tourism, in jewelry, in stitching or embroidery. Some of them are also based in Kaliningrad, but these are more creatives who try to work with local materials. So we brought people together to discuss what would be the most relevant activity within this quite short period of time, which the project is running in Kaliningrad, in the Kaliningrad region. And it looks like, regardless of the, so to say, discipline of the craft or professional level, because there are people who work for 10 years with their medium or with what they do, and there are also people who just start. And the basic two needs, which were sort of levels, I would say, which people were mentioning, it was like 26 women actually we brought together. They are talking about the need to sort of develop their skills in the digital space, but on a user level, mainly connected with building their self-promotion, with building their identity and brand. And there was a long discussion within our team if we want to address that, and if yes, then in what way. But it is definitely not that we are going to work with the technological side, but rather with this gap, like intermediary space between a person, technology, like a story. Probably we would like to work with to sort of to motivate people to think together what kind of stories they could tell about what they do and how they could tell that. And this brings us to the very fundamental second sort of track of conceptual work. It looks like it's not only within the group of our participants, but on the wider level, there is a huge need for like conceptual thinking on how to link history and landscape to what is really produced here. Because when we talk about the region in terms of heritage and identity, it's sometimes difficult to grasp what kind of heritage we would like to talk about, because it's very multi-layered. And in terms of, for example, techniques like crafts, basically many things have gone after the Second World War, and what we have and what new settlers have brought here. There are many things, but what can be sort of addressed as heritage, then this is the question. Is it the crafts which people brought with them from the mainland Russia, or like are these crafts connected to sort of the regions they come from and things like that? So what we decided to do, that we try to address both levels through a series of events. One of them would be like an expedition. It's more focusing on conceptual level, like looking for cultural codes of the area. What are the methodologies for that? And it will be like a lab, 2-3 days events where both like participants who locals, but also people not based in that particular area, but working with crafts and producing like or developing some kind of artistic or creative product. They will come together to stay together to share their views on how this can be traced and captured. That's, I think, it in brief. Yes, and also that would be the first, but there was also the need for intergenerational links that we sensed also from the participants. What are the methodologies to build that link between youngsters and people of older people? How those practices can be further sort of transferred, and that would be another type of the lab which we still plan to have on the Curonian speed, and then we thought of the suburbs also of Kaliningrad, because these are also in a way remote areas. So it's still in the process of development, I think, but maybe the project will greatly change also. We'll see. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. I think that cultural codes of an area, like in your case, Kaliningrad, and reaching to other geographical parts of Russia, also goes above other borders. I think that we all recognize the patterns, the methods, the subjects, even from our regions and from the work of artists. When I was looking at this cooking of herbs, it reminded me about Irish artists, which we were working with in Gdańsk at the old shipyard. She was also using herbs in the same way and used them in Greece. So I think that that kind of creativity goes very much above borders, and I'm thankful to that. Magdalena Zaczewska-Duda, the leader of Baltic Sea Cultural Center
team. Yes, of course, I'm not the leader of the whole center, but just of this part of the project. And can I ask you, Elizabeth, to show the website of our center? I'll try to be quite brief, because I think it would be interesting to discuss, also to find some, at least, moments to discuss. So we are celebrating this year 30 years of our activities as a public cultural institution of Pomorsky region, and to be precise, of the Marshal Office of the Pomorskie Voivodeship. And it was when we were established in 1992, it was, yes, in our mission to build bridges through culture with our neighbors, to promote our Pomeranian culture in the region, but also to bring the Baltic Sea region culture to Pomerania and to Poland. And we do it through various disciplines of culture and art, starting from music, for example, Sounds of the North Festival, through literature like Baltic Meetings of Illustrators, through really all multidisciplinary projects. And in the past, we had already mentioned Memory of Water, or also mentioned by Lissa, herb culture planning projects, where we also mix these participatory strategies with new technologies already. So this interest has been with us for quite a while. Can I ask you, Elizabeth, also to show our venue, our This is the one of our venues. Actually, we have two. So this is the old town hall. The other is Gothic St. John's Church. So we are also very much interested in talking and educating about cultural heritage, of course. But not also only tangible heritage, but also intangible. So in this project, we would like to concentrate. We have already started working with the embroidery patterns from Powiśle region. And Elizabeth, perhaps you can show what it looks like. It's white embroidery. And we started cooperation with Kwizyńskie Centrum Kultury, with the embroiderer Katarzyna Magierowska. And we already had in the past 2 weeks some embroidery workshops with a local group of women, young women. And also we started thinking how to transfer this knowledge into the digital dimension thanks to workshops with Dorota Madej, expert on design of services, on design thinking. So we already had some idea for the application that can be using this embroidery. So, as everywhere else in this project, this is the project where women are leaders. So in our team, I have 2 colleagues, Agnieszka Jacobson, who is present with us, and she's responsible for this regional cultural tradition, and she's an expert on that, and also Aleksandra Halicka, who is the expert on storytelling. She tells beautifully about what we are doing in this project. And of course, I also mentioned 2 other experts, embroiderer and our expert on IT technologies or IT sort of thinking. So I think that would be it from me, because and I'm very happy that we can cooperate in this project.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Magda. I was so impressed by your methodology of making a digital pattern and then transforming it to a real embroidery, which we actually looked at it also in our group, and we will try to use or to learn to find somebody who can teach us that. So thank you very much. And now Krystyna Wróblewska, representing Euro-region Baltic. Krystyna, please.
Thank you very much, Ilona, and great being online, if not in real life. And Euro-region Baltic that I'm representing now in this project is the cooperation between regions and communes from Denmark, Lithuania, Latvia, at some points Poland, Russia, here we mean Kaliningrad region, and Sweden. And it was established in 1998. And back then, we strongly believed that with the experience we all have, time has come for us to meet over cooperation tables and not battlefields. Our aim has been, throughout those years, to improve life conditions, promote contacts and strengthen bonds, eliminate historical prejudices, and support cooperation projects. We have had great cooperation by now in such areas as environment protection, youth cooperation, culture and cultural heritage, tourism, small infrastructure development. And we have jointly implemented many projects, such as recent ones, for instance, Waterman, where we are protecting water in our area, or Umbrella, which is supporting cooperation between smaller entities because they really do matter, as in this creative project, the Creative Waves project. And we have also, in cooperation with other Baltics region organizations and institutions, including Council of the Baltic Sea States, which has always supported us strongly, worked to influence policies important to our area. And for instance, within the European Union strategy for the Baltics region, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the European Green Deal. And we are involved in such important initiatives like Baltic Sea Youth Platform, a Baltic Sea Cultural Cities and Regions project. And in Creative Waves project, we are responsible mainly for international meetings like this webinar, ensuring contacts and promoting our project and its results among the Baltic Sea networks, and spreading information on Baltic Sea strategy, key EU environmental policies, and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and especially those on gender equality, sustainable citizen communities, responsible consumption and production, or climate action. And here I will stop because our role in the project is not that much creative, so I will not develop on that. But I'd like to also thank, because it's always about team job and teamwork, I'd like to help Magda Leszczyna-Rzucidło and Ania Dudziak from your region Baltic for great support. I have enjoyed, and we all have enjoyed in our activities. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Christina. Now the last partner, but not least, of course, in the project, Estonian Women's Studies and Resource Centers, Enut. Read, please. You are still muted. It's all right. Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
I am Riit-Laia from Estonian Women's Studies and Resource Center. We were established our organization 25 years ago, and Women's Studies and Resource Center, its acronym is ENUT, and we are a non-profit organization dedicated to the advancement of equality between women and men as a basic human rights, and to the promotion of general welfare in all spheres of society. We are very active organizer and developer of networks for organizations in Estonia. And we are partner to governmental, educational, and business organizations. And our organizational role is that we provide relevant information to our members and to the networks, different networks. And we are active in different domestic and international projects. We have a special academic journal, and we have library. This library contains presently more than 9,000 women's and gender studies books and other materials. And we have there in very different disciplines: humanities, social sciences, technology, medicine, and so on. In this project, we offer our knowledge about gender equality and gender equality aspects in the project activities, and we have had to this stage deeper contacts with the Kaliningrad colleagues and the Poland partners also. What we think that the cultural heritage meets new technologies topic is very important today's world. Thank you for the cooperation and peace.
Yes, peace above all. Thank you. You are a mine of knowledge on different aspects of gender studies, which we experience already with all the links we are getting from you all the time to study the very theoretical aspects, but we are dealing with women, so it's not at all theory at the end. And that chapter of our project will continue. So now we will close the presentation. That was all, and I'm opening the floor for questions. We promised to take a look at the chat and see if there were questions there. I think that I put some questions myself. Maybe there is anything from other people also. Christina, how does it look like?
Yeah, we've had several comments and several questions. Thank you for that. One of the questions was to the first presentation, and it was craft as a way to keep sense of identity and root, as opposite to modern technologies, which is universal and mutual. This was a comment that we had from one of the participants. The question was, could somebody make a living of making lamps that were shown in the presentation? Were there any discussions on that during the project, or maybe you have some conclusions from it, Agnieszka?
So what I know about it, that it was one of the factors, one of the triggers to the project. So the one was this environmental issue about the PET bottles, which are everywhere. And I think especially in Colombia, because it started in Colombia, it was really a lot of waste and no idea how to utilize it. But the other was as an idea to involve people's skills, to give them possibility to earn. So if you will Google pet lamp I will see, but pet lamp, and it's the first position which appears. You see that they organize, they build transparent and sustainable business out of it. So people in those communities, they make the lamps, and those lamps are sold to the so-called first word, and then the income is sent back to the communities. So I think this project was really one of those, because I think there is many of ideas like this in the air, but not very often. They are so complete and so well solved on every level. So it was, like three. It's environmental, it's social, and it's also about the craft and finding new areas to explore this craft and to preserve it.
As a matter of fact, quite like our Creative Waves project, from a slightly maybe different perspective, but the same. Thank you. There was also another question to you, and it was, is it possible for a designer to scale up the production?
So, that's always difficult question, because, this kind of activities between the technology, design and craft there is a lot of research. And if you want to scale it, there is also the money issue. And if there is someone who's ready to wait and to invest in continuing research, then it can get the scale. But also very often happens that, the brilliant ideas proposed by designers, if they are tested through the big scale, they don't pass this examination because of this or that reason, they are not possible to grow. So I think it's very, the designers are very radical, and industries are not so progressive. But it's very often because, things which in the laboratory or in studio scale make sense, it doesn't make sense in bigger scale. So, But but on the other hand, actually the slide which I jump over, it was about the Envision, and I will tell just 2 sentences. The Envision is the Dutch collective where the big industries come with the materials they produce. So they are like the producer of the hardboards or textiles or foams or this kind of stuff, to let them space to experiment, to find the new ways of using, the new ways of working with this material. And then if designer works in this combination, then it has a possibility to gain a scale.
Mm.
You started talking about Balticness, and I know that you have arranged or you traveled with your exhibition throughout the cities of the Baltic Sea area. And at the beginning of your presentation, you said that the shapes and various elements of environment, etc., have importance. They do influence whatever we do and how we feel. And so basing on that, would you say that we can talk about something like Baltic Sea identity, or that would be too far-fetched?
So I would say yes. And you would have to invite me again so I can present this concept. But it started with it's very it started. So my whole project started with that I have photographs of the paragliding photographer from Gdynia, and I created the exhibition in Denmark. And when the exhibition was hung on the walls and I went for the walk on the seaside, I realized that I didn't bring anything new. And it was trigger for my research because, the landscape, the sea, the colors, everything looked very alike. And then, I really believe that, there is that what we are looking at and what we are experiencing in the material sense, like the shapes, like the materials, like the views, it shapes our imagination on the very unconscious level. So so it's a kind of tacit experience, which then whatever we do, it's part of us. So if this experience of Baltic, especially not on the political, cultural, historical, but the visual and material level.
Probably emotional to some extent.
Probably emotional as well, but so for me it's absolutely, it is the category. It's a category.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I think Ivona, you have had some comments and questions to Lissa, so I think it will be more natural if you pose them yourself, don't you think?
Okay, which one was that? Yeah, identity. We were speaking about identity.
Is digital technology something?
Yes, I can say it. Yeah, because you were speaking about the normative part of this development, like digital tech. And my question was: is digital technology getting normative? Even in crafts, we are dealing with amateurs, and we are speaking about teaching Instagram, which is so far from the level of the university. And I understand that it's nothing strange with that, but what shall I tell women in the group? That they must learn the digital tools starting from the basics because it's necessary. Can they still work with the traditional techniques? One of the painters present, she's actually a big painter. She was present at the meeting, and she came to me and she said, you are speaking about the digital tools, and I'm still using my pencil, and I will not give it up. This is my methodology. So where goes the line between where to start or when to stop and when to continue?
Yeah, I think when I talk about it being normative, in this sense, it's that it's normative in culture and that we encounter, technology in the way that we carry our phones around, or as I said, we're here online. It's not specifically normative, absolutely, in every single sort of domain, meaning with handicrafts or with somebody, as you said, who might not even be comfortable with Instagram at this point. But that's where the cooperation and the collaboration, I think, really needs to sort of come together. The idea isn't that you have to learn all the technology, or that you have to understand how VR works and we have to work in VR. You can work with a very simple, simple technology or lower level access technology like Instagram. If you can work in teams and if you can create these kind of networks of support around them, which is why I think it's so important what you're talking about. It's about being able to workshop and being able to have conversations that allow someone to, explain what their materials are, what their familiar worlds are, and then to make choices about how other kinds of technologies might help support the two of them together, because otherwise it does become this kind of imbalance. Either someone doesn't have access, or their whole craft gets sort of taken over by some technology that doesn't really understand the kind of the cooperation between it. So I always think about that when I use that quote about technology has become normative in museums, because often I work with small museums too. So it's not normative in our museum, but it's normative in the kind of the culture around it. And we have to figure out how we can leverage, again, the simplicity, maybe not for everybody, but the simplicity of a phone that has a camera. A lot can happen with that can naturally scan a QR code or can take a picture. Someone can help upload that picture onto a website. I think it's so much about the experience and the story, not the technology that's in there. But it takes teams, takes a village.
Yeah, exactly. And my thought here is, my short reflection is that how quickly are we moving from being innovative to being normative? Even if in the cultural world, we are speaking a lot nowadays about digital tools for performative arts, for example, and I think that leads us to a comment of Petja Kolieva. Can we let Petja in? You can let yourself in, I think. Hello, Petja. About the audiences, I love your comment about the audiences, that we must be digital because our audiences already are.
Yes, this is something I say based on the experience we had of researching, particularly in Bulgaria, but also across Europe with some international partners, what the audience and the public think about what's available to them, especially in the last 2 years in times of COVID, when direct participation in cultural events or processes was hindered. And we discovered that not only, of course, that people, first of all, do appreciate and hope that the physical live attendance will come back, and this is the most desirable form. But at the same time, they have a huge problem of not being able to find an entry point to those interesting initiatives which are just around the corner. And a great deal of this problem comes from the fact that social media are burdened with too much information and too many of the similar offers and too many promotional offers, commercial projects, whereas cultural organizations, especially small initiatives, especially intersectoral collaboration, which is very innovative most of the time, they struggle to reach the community and the audience and the public which will support them. And for this reason, it is very important, even if we don't know how to use technology, to especially to recognize this need and then seek collaboration so we can address it.
which is kind of a very, very, very needed development, independently of who we are speaking to or working with. It seems that staying on the side of pencil, which Agnieszka is mentioning here, is of course still possible, but that will not lead us to new audiences or even to promotion. Many people are speaking about self-promotion or promotion in general, which in more hard terms means selling. Ladies we've met on Saturday, many were speaking about a need of opening to looking for where to promote their products, how to sell the products. So from the traditional way of speaking about audiences, about development, about culture, about identity, which is always a base of the discussion, the last question is how to sell it, how to promote myself. I see Joanna Jezierska speaking a lot about it here. Joanna, are you here? No? What a pity, because yeah, here somebody comes. Joanna, your comments.
Yes, I'm here.
Promotion, yeah?
Yeah, I'm quite talkative person, that's why I'm talk a lot.
You are so welcome.
Well, you see, it's the best place to find, how to cooperate with others. And sometimes it's the easiest way is just to open for other peoples and people and meet together, and sometimes just to show them how to do and where to do, and the medium, and this is enough.
So you mean that you need those stories to tell the story?
You see, it's like we were talking about materials and we were talking about meaning of stuff, but we didn't talk too much about process and all the stories talking through the craftsman. You see, when the older shows something, you have to say, you have to talk, and then it's the connection between young one and the old master. And I think it's the most important. This.
Yeah, so we are now back to Lissa and the stories.
Thanks.
How to create, thank you, Joanna.
Yeah.
How to create stories around your own work. I mean, you can find stories in the region, you can find stories and transform them to books. Can we somehow find stories about the crafts, the artism, the art pieces we are creating, and present those stories and use those stories for promoting ourselves?
So
I'm sorry, was that question for me?
Or Lissa, I thought.
Okay.
Just here. Yeah, I cannot
Yes.
see. Sorry. I must change the view probably. Yeah, here, gallery. Yeah. Lissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's back to my, it matters what matters you use to tell stories with. The point to me would be, I mean, what are the stories that what are the stories that you want to tell? I mean, can you tell the story of of the pot by telling the story of the soil and of the clay and how it comes to be, and as opposed to transcribing a narrative that comes in a way? Is there a way we can find a way to let the process tell us what's important, about the making? And that requires, some sensitivity to, as I said, to process, not to product, and to think innovative. And I don't know what those stories are yet because I don't know how to get to them. But I would say too, it's a team of people listening, and watching, and they're slow to emerge. You have to give them time. Our storytelling project has been a 6-year project three times, 3 years, offered twice, you know, where we slowly are building and building and building this network, and has involved hundreds of people at this point. And, you know, lots, again, the stories that are not just in the books, or the, you know, there's lots of other stories outside of those. So, yeah, I mean, I can't remember the question anymore, but my answer was yes, whatever it was.
About the stories. So when we've met on Saturday, one of our lead artists, Harina Rosa, she is present here also. She told the story of her life, which it took 1.5 hours, and it was so inspiring, and it gave so much energy to the group of women gathered in the room that they couldn't stop talking afterwards, willing also to tell the story of their life, how they reached the talent, developed the talent, how they started to create with own hands, and what are the dreams compared with the presenter. She fulfilled her dreams a lot, but they wanted now to take the path of her, and that was that empowering was thanks to the story. So I think that stories can be used in many different ways. Sorry, Agnieszka, please, Agnieszka. Yeah,
I just wanted to have one more comment, because you, for sure, you noticed when I talk about this pet lamp, you noticed the beautiful photos of the makers in the traditional dresses and presenting in the beautiful way. They didn't make it themselves. And there is no reason to force them to become the photographer, Instagrammers, and so on. So maybe it's our role, and maybe it's on our side, if we initiate those projects, to create the visibility around. Because what they know, what they are doing, they know how to pleat the baskets. And somebody gave them a pattern to make the form. But then the whole story around was created by professionals who know how to do the photos, how to write the stories, how to spread it around the world. And I think that's the field for cooperation. So I would say rather to learn where there are institutions, foundations, organizations supporting people who are not knowledgeable and who know who make those things, because otherwise these lamps would stay in Colombia, Chile, and Mexico, or where they were produced. So that would be my advice.
So creative people, they need the surrounding of supportive organizations or other people or businesses or whatever to push towards the broader fields.
Yeah, because the best trained artisan with the best camera won't do the professional photo shooting, like that. So maybe it's better to have it in budget and just to produce this story.
Yeah, which we actually do in the creative waves. This is the goal of the project, even if the scale is very small, very little. But I hope that this can be the first step, that with the help of Council of the Baltic Sea States, that we could start, and then that we can proceed with other funds or other possibilities of collaborate internationally, nationally, regionally, whatever. This is how it works. And I think that many of us dealing with projects know the methodology, right? So I hope that, well, I know that this project will develop, those collaboration will be great. So watch us on Facebook, watch us on social media. And of course we will be back with other international webinars, and I hope that you also can give us some food for thoughts, that is ideas, tips. Write to us. Our email addresses and our contacts are everywhere on the websites and Facebook, so you are welcome to come back and propose any ideas. Petya, your suggestion, yes, exactly my suggestion.
Yes. I was just going to share, we have already a second year project, which is a micro incubation project to support. This year we work with cultural organizations that are very small and outside the big capitals, and exactly those needs, understanding art marketing, understanding communication. So if we have projects which are a bit providing a bit of capacity building as well as financial support to build these bridges, that helps a lot. But it is a journey for sure. But it's a great project to have.
I also think that it's a very valid subject nowadays. I don't know why. Maybe somebody, a researcher, can answer that question. But collaborations on the subject of crafts, of stories, of identity has been very much growing around in our cultural world. Okay, so I think that it's time to close the webinar, Christina, isn't it? I can't hear you.
Yes, it seems so. And I'd like, on behalf of the whole partnership, to thank our speakers for being with us and spending the time here and sharing your knowledge, and all the participants to join. And as Ivona said, do follow us wherever you can. Maybe you find inspiration there too.
Yes, so, and thank you so much also from my part. Let's follow our dreams, let's follow our plans, and let's see each other again very soon in a more peaceful world.